Hey everybody, welcome to this edition of Tournament Talk. I'm here with Mark Dvoroznak from the Base Sports Group, and our goal here today is to educate you a little bit on sports tourism and sponsorship around youth amateur events. Welcome, Mark.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
of course.
This will be fun.
I was excited for you to come on. So a little bit about myself. My name is Jason Puckett. I'm the Director of Business Development for Pellucid Travel. I've been in the industry for quite some time, first starting out my career with Visit Sarasota, then going to the facility side with IMG Academy, and now lucky enough to be a part of the Pellucid Travel team. So Mark here has been in sports also for quite some time. Right now he's leading partnerships and really the operations side for the Base Sports Group. Mark started out with Prep Baseball Report, handling their national business development, which is where we met when I was at my time at IMG. He then moved on to the Director of Program Development at USA Baseball in Cary, North Carolina, and really focused on event and team management and really helping them with their fiscal and economic growth. And now Mark is here with the Base Sports Group. And so we're excited to have him join us today and kind of talk a little bit about sponsorships. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. No, and I appreciate the intro. Yeah, very accurate as far as my background goes. Actually, USA Baseball was first, and then I went to PBR, but that's a good transition either way.
Hey, well, there you go. Well, that makes sense. So I'd like to start off a little bit to help people get to know a little bit about you. So baseball seems to be your sport, looking at what your background is and where you've worked. Are there any sort of like major achievements you have or memorable moments that you want to share with the group?
Yeah, and baseball is, it's my background. It's kind of what I grew up in, what I've been playing and working in really my entire career. So it's been an important part of what I do. Played collegiately at West Virginia, so a lot of really good memories playing in the old Big East. A lot of really good players to kind of come out of that conference while we were there. Notre Dame, Louisville, St. John's, UConn. Really a lot of good baseball that came out of that conference. A lot of guys that are still playing in the big leagues. But honestly, some of the most memorable experiences that I had actually they came collegiately, but also when I was done collegiately working with Team USA. Having the opportunity to go international, to go to Cuba, to go to Taiwan, wear that USA across your chest in international waters, and to bring back gold medals to the homeland, right? That was something that was pretty special during my times there.
That's awesome. Yeah, and traveling abroad like that, I'm sure gives you a different perspective on what baseball means to those communities, and just it's always great to travel, right? This is why we're in the industry we are. We love to travel, and the fact that people are moving around the country now in the world is a great thing. Yeah. So you went to school, I saw in your bio, for accounting. How did you end up in, the event management side, in the baseball side? How did that end up coming about?
Who knows, right? No, everybody's path is a little different. I love numbers, always been a numbers person. My dad was somebody who I really looked up to. He was a CPA, and I always kind of figured maybe I would follow down that route. But at the same time, I think everybody that goes to college and plays baseball wants to be the next GM of the Cleveland Guardians, right?
Yeah.
But not everybody, you can't graduate and get into a front office. So my way to navigate into, working with the Cleveland Indians at the time was through stadium operations. So my brother actually had a job with the Cleveland Browns. I was able to sign on as an intern with the Browns and then just continue to navigate my way into the front office, but really through stadium operations. So I think everybody's route is a little different to where they think they want to get at the end of the day, but mine was not through accounting. It was through stadium operations, setup, tear down, which then was a really good transfer into operating and managing some of these larger events and facilities across the country.
Very cool. Yeah. I mean, I always tell someone that's looking to get into the industry, go work for minor league baseball or go work for a major league team and get in the grind. And you're going to understand really quickly whether or not this is something for you or if you want to take another career path.
You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's You can, I see a lot of people, and I talk to, we're currently going through interviewing a lot of interns right now, and when we're working, with these groups, and I remember growing up, right, if you can get some of these internships with some of these, Fortune 500 companies, but a lot of times, they can kind of pigeonhole you into certain areas. So I think a lot of young individuals that are either in college or graduating from college are looking for experience, right? And when you're working for, I was lucky enough to work with unions, but if you're working with, a minor league club, you have to wear a lot of hats, right? So you can really figure out as an individual, hey, I'm really good at this, or hey, I really like this, or hey, I really don't like this, right? And it's a lot of work and a lot of time, but I think you really learn a lot about yourself through those experiences.
Yeah, no, 100%, very well said. So you then transitioned over into, sponsorship and business development. Kind of how did you decide that was going to be your career path moving forward?
That's a great question. An interesting one. I don't think I really ever could have said, hey, I want to get into sponsorship sales, right?
Sure. Right.
But working, with USA Baseball, working with a great company like Prep Baseball Report, there was a need in the market that we saw. Something that's really a passion of mine, and it's, again, my background's in baseball, but I think the passion runs throughout all sports. I just think youth and amateur sports are so important to individuals, but also to, the communities that they belong to. And sponsorship, advertising, however you want to look at it, it's an opportunity to provide additional revenue to some of these venues or events across the country. And if that additional revenue can provide more opportunities for people within the community to, attend events, or individuals or teams who typically might not be able to attend events have the opportunity to do that, I think that's kind of what pushed me into the space. So as much as we can do to continue to grow these different games, or grow these different opportunities for individuals who don't necessarily have those opportunities, I think at my core, that's where I started.
Yeah, no, that's great. That makes sense. So, earlier in your career, you were with USA Baseball, then Prep Baseball Report. I got that right this time, right?
There you go.
So what's a lesson or two that you learned that you think applies, across the industry, not just in that industry, but what are some things that early on that you learned that you feel like would be a valuable, talking point for someone watching this?
I think it's to listen. I think it's to listen and to share ideas. Something that's awesome about, Jason, the world that you and I have lived in is you get to meet people from every different corner of the United States, right? And internationally, right? We were just talking about some of the international trips that we had, and everybody brings a different perspective. So whether that's staff that you're working with, whether that's competitors that are running different events, or people that are running events in different sports, you can really, and you don't have to take every single piece of advice, but if you can pick and choose, some small tidbits here and there, I think it's really going to help your organization grow as a whole. Something that we do at Base, and something that I've always been a big proponent of, are the surveys as well, right? It's easy for you and I to sit down at some of these larger conferences and, talk best practices, but at the end of the day, the parents, coaches, family members who are attending those events, who are the people that you're trying to please with these experiences because you want them to come back, I think it's important for them to be heard. And I think people can really learn a lot from just opening their ears and having an open mind to those conversations.
Well, and what you just said, I think is valuable for sales or business development across the board. The more that you listen and the more that you ask questions, you're going to start to understand what they're looking for and who they are as individuals, but who they are as a company. And I know I struggle with this. Sometimes I'm very eager to talk, or I'm thinking about the next thing I want to say. But if you can take the time to stop, pause, and listen to what they're saying, ask them the right questions, really you're going to kind of get the answers to the test as you start to understand what's important to them. So I think that's critical and good advice.
Yeah, no, I think it's huge. And, again, listen to people who maybe don't have the same viewpoint as you, right? Because again, you're not going to agree on everything, and nobody ever is, but being able to just see things from different angles, right?
Yeah.
Talk to people in different sectors of your organization, right? Or even like the interns that we're bringing in, they bring in maybe a lot of not good views, right? But they do have some pretty good ideas that
Sure.
if we can take bits and pieces of those, like I think as an organization, we're all going to grow together.
That's a valuable lesson for life, right? You know, now that we're starting to get back into interacting face to face, I took a lot of value of this last conference season and things that you lose when it's the digital quick sound bites of the social media world, or even just your email. So I'm with you 100% on that. All right. So tell me, what is your day-to-day focus at Bay Sports Group? What do you try to accomplish on a daily basis?
Every day is a little different, right?
Yeah.
I think we all know, being in this event operations or travel industry, every day brings its different challenges, right? We have a really good set of partners that we currently work with right now. So really the day-to-day is continuing to put our staff in a position to help them succeed. And by help them succeed, a lot of that information is if we partner with a facility, right? We need to get boots on the ground in the facility. We need to meet the people within that facility because when we take their group to market, we need to have a really good idea of who they are, some of their values. That way we can kind of ingrain ourselves and make ourselves a part of their team. But then also a lot of the day is spent with different brands and different agencies to try to educate them on this new space. That's, education, I think, is extremely important to a lot of these brands. You do see a lot of these brands trying to, they want to promote the local communities that they're involved with. But I think in a lot of situations, they don't know how, right? The youth sports or the amateur sports landscape has changed so much over the last 5, 10, 15 years that education piece has been really an extremely heavy part of my daily job, for sure.
Yeah, I think people, they understand the concept of sponsorship and partnerships, but I think, there's a little apprehension on, hey, maybe my event or my event series is not as valuable as maybe, what a company would need. And so educating them on what brands are looking for and what they can provide is critical. So, when we connected recently at conference, you kind of shared to me, you want to bring a professional sports sponsorship approach to amateur sports. I thought that was very compelling. I thought it's something that was needed in the industry. Can you just expand a little bit more on how you're doing that? And you don't
need definitely.
But kind of an overview of what elements you're trying to bring.
No, I think that's a great question. It's something that we at Base are really trying to, separate ourselves with, because a lot of, sponsorship or advertising, opportunities are, hey, I'll give you X amount of dollars and you can sign a banner on the fence, right? But what is that worth? What is that value, right? I guess at the end of the day, the value is what somebody's going to pay for it, right? But our team, we have a separate department, and my partner comes from the really more of like the traditional like sponsorship, data, and analytics side. She was working with a company called Repucon, who was eventually acquired by Nielsen, who everybody knows as the TV ratings company. So what we're really trying to do is put actual dollar figures behind some of these opportunities, so that when brands come in, they can see, the true ROI for their marketing dollars that they're spending, right? One of the worst things that we see that happens, and we see it with a lot of groups, is, they have this local relationship, they get like a 3-year sponsorship opportunity. Awesome. Like, I think that's great for everybody. And then after 3 years, that brand or individual comes back and says, hey, what did I get out of this?
Right. What was the overall value? What was the return on investment?
Right. And a lot of groups, and even a lot of times in the collegiate space, right, they don't put a lot of this data and metrics behind it. So what our team is spending a lot of time on, and I'm happy to share some of the reports that we've put out there, but a lot of what we're spending a lot of time on is showing that ROI. The biggest thing for us is obviously getting the sponsors, but getting those renewals, right? Getting the upsell actually on some of those renewals and opportunities.
Yeah, that's great. And are you also aggregating maybe some smaller event operators around the country to combine them to make them more valuable to sponsors? So like ABC baseball tournament in the Northeast, and then XYZ baseball tournament organizer in the Southwest. If they were to aggregate their exposure to their attendees, there's more value for a company. Are you doing that?
Definitely. Yep. And I think that's the ultimate goal. That's kind of part of like the long-term goal. Right now in the short term, we have a few really good partners that we're working on selling on in the space. But yes, when you're going to some of these larger national regional companies, right, numbers matter. Number of individuals, the number of clicks, the number of foot traffic really matters. So if we're able to work together with a couple different groups, to create, some larger sponsorship opportunities, and opportunities for some groups that, again, because of that they're running great events, right?
Yeah.
But because of just the sheer number of foot traffic, might not be able to, get into some of these conversations. We're able to open up some of those doors.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So, the amateur youth sports industry, I think, still has a lot of room to grow. I mean, it's a $1 billion business. When you look at the reports from Sports ETA, I think it was $4 billion were generated from sports tourism from a report a few years ago. What are some of the opportunities you see, and what are some of the challenges you see, both short-term and long-term for the industry, specifically in regards to sponsorship or business development?
Yeah, I mean, some of the opportunities, as you mentioned, right? Like, I think sports are such an integral part of humanity, right? People growing up, right? I think the locker room setting, the team setting provides such value in these different communities. But I also think that these sports centers or these different events are extremely important to these towns and these communities that we all live in, right? So I think there's a huge opportunity for these events to continue to grow. I think even kind of going through the pandemic over the last couple of years, I think people understand the value of getting outside, right? Of interacting with different individuals. So I think, and I hope that number continues to grow. Some of the challenges from a business development standpoint are, again, it's educating these different brands and being able to put, ROI in front of them of why it's valuable, right? Like a lot of these companies are, yes, we want to support like the local community. We want to support, female athletes. And this is a perfect opportunity to do that. But a lot of times that they either aren't educated that this is there, or honestly, they have a lot of worries about inconsistencies across the board, right? When you're working in the collegiate space or with a professional club, they have 10 or 15 staff members that are in charge of sponsorship. So they know that when they purchase an outfield fence, right, they know how many people are going to the games, they know how many people are going to watch it on TV, they know the exact viewerships. In youth sports, every field is different, which is a good thing, right? So I think a lot of the larger brands are worried about some of those inconsistencies.
Right. Are there deliverables going to be actually delivered in the right way which they agreed to? And that's when you have to rely on your partners, either the facility that you partnered with or the event organizer, that, hey, this is what they're paying for. We need to deliver. And to be honest with you, we need to over deliver, right? You don't want to just do the bare minimum. You're not going to give them everything, but you also don't want to just, give them the bare minimum, especially if you're trying to create a relationship.
And I think that's such an important point, Jason, because, and really why, I was motivated to, get creative with Base Sports Group was, as we all know, we get into running these events, right? And our main focus, when I say our, event operators or rights holders, right? The main focus should be on the individuals attending these events, right? You need to service those clients. Like, those are the people that keep the lights on. Those are the people that are attending the events, right?
Sure.
So that's the most important, and it should be the most important piece whenever operating an event. So when a sponsor comes along and they're worried about, hey, is their sign hung up or is their activation placed in the highest traffic foot area? And all of a sudden you're running an event and it's raining outside and you have to change your schedules, right? That's where we're able to kind of come in and really help with some of those situations.
Right.
Because
Be an extension of their staff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's very similar, right? You're trying to be an extension of their staff from the sponsorship biz dev standpoint. And what we do at Pellucid Travel is we try to tell them, hey, we're an extension of your staff on all things housing. Work with us and you don't have to think about it. Just give us the tools to be successful in the beginning, and then we will help you achieve those other goals. And so, yeah. And I think too, that another mindset change potentially for these youth amateur sports is, if you find the right sponsors and the right partners, they can actually add value to your event. They can make that experience for those participants, which we're talking about, better. They can leave with something. They can have something that makes their experience better. But it is finding the right partners, right? I would say on the partners, on the event organizer side, if someone's just wanting a banner and an ad and that's it, they might not be as the right fit for integration as you may need to help your organization get to the higher level.
That's a really good point. And I think that's something that we, and again, as I was getting into the industry, sponsorship advertising was kind of the same thing. Right. But when we talk about, bringing a professional standpoint of sponsorship and advertising to amateur sports, I think you just kind of hit on it a little bit, right? Anybody can sell a sponsor and have a sign on the wall, right? That's advertising, right? That's a simple sign. That's calculating some foot traffic, et cetera. What we really try to do with these events are to create those experiences, right? If you're going to a basketball tournament, we're going to create a space where you have pop-a-shot, right? You have putting games, you have a three-point contest, you have all of these different activations and touch points where, one, the people at the event, right, it can elevate their experiences, but also it gives these brands a really good touch point to the attendees of the event.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So then we talked a little bit about this because event organizers have a very simple focus. Even the facility operations, this is what they're focused on. How do you kind of balance what they have in place already for revenue generation versus kind of where they need to be for sustained success with partners? Because the great thing about sponsorships is it goes direct to your bottom line. It's helping offset those expenses that you maybe had to go and fight for registrations for, or you had to increase parking to help you cover the cost of the lights or the rentals of the fields. So, that balance of what they currently have in place to help them understand, hey, sponsorships can really take you to that next level.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time with our partners before really taking them to market, right? As I'm sure you guys do as well. Like we as you mentioned earlier, right? We want to be an extension of what they're doing. We're not somebody that's going to come in, take over everything, blow everything up and change it, right? We want to come in, we want to hear what they have in place, and then look at some other opportunities that we can potentially add. A lot of times we can take a look at what they have in place too and look to expand on those opportunities, right? Once you have a group that's interested and you have involved, awesome, right? They understand, who they're supporting and what the return is that they're getting. But being able to create different opportunities to expand that relationship so that it works for both the brands, but also the operators, is something that I think, we definitely dive into before taking anything to market. Again, and then evaluating, what you have, right? A lot of people say, hey, we have X amount of people coming through our gates. What does that mean?
Right.
So for us to be able to, compare that and contrast that and put some financial numbers behind what we think we can, garner for some of these groups, even just from a conversation standpoint, I think that's, pretty helpful coming in.
Yeah. We've said it a couple of times now, utilizing data, in this world these days, data is everything. What are some ways, how are you using data to support, the company's missions or the sponsor missions? If you can give some examples, great.
Yeah, we look at the obvious, right? Like there's some easy ones like foot traffic, website traffic, clicks, et cetera. A lot of those are actually getting more and more challenging with the death of the cookie, right? With a lot of these like Apple updates, scrolling fatigue. So what we're actually putting a lot of surveys into market, right? We want to have an idea of what these parents, of what these athletes, of what these coaches are looking for in sponsors, and being able to aggregate that data from certain events, but also from events around the country, right? We're able to just create a much better story of the demographics of these individuals that are attending these events.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important piece that Again, my partner, Carrie, who's much smarter than I am, she's really able to dissect what those numbers mean, and how to, take those back to the company, right, who's running these events. One, they can use them in, inviting other individuals, right? They can see who their targeted demographic is, or different areas maybe that they're not currently serving. So a lot of that stuff can be, and again, that goes back to, I think one of the first questions is just listening, right? So just listening to the people attending the events is an extremely important part of what we're doing.
And so you're aggregating the answers from those surveys, the data you get from speaking to the facility they've been organizing at the beginning, and then putting that into a digestible package that a sponsor could look at, a brand could look at, and then decide, hey, they're hitting our demographics, they, are showing growth, whatever that may be. I'm assuming that's what you do, which is cool.
Yeah. And that's, again, that's every brand is looking for something different, right? Some brands are, hey, we just want to support the local community. Here you go. Some brands are, hey, we need to be in Florida, or we're trying to expand our footprint in Cleveland, Ohio, right? So being able to have all that data, talk to these brands, and be able to put them in a situation where they have the most success is only going to help, different brands and different event operators across the country. Because once these brands and sponsors start seeing, the value that they're getting out of these events, it's only going to kind of help everybody else across the board.
Yeah, that's great. One thing I saw recently, which blew my mind, and it made sense, I think it was at the US Sports Congress we were at, was this mobile tracking post-event, this heat map where, people, when they sign on to Wi-Fi and those terms and conditions, they're accepting being tracked for X amount of time once they leave an event. But the data that you can collect seems to be so valuable. It's a little scary, right? Big Brother knows where you've left to, where you've stopped to go eat, where you went shopping. But from someone at your side, that data is invaluable. So, things like that I thought are super, super interesting. And I'm sure you guys are doing things along those lines. But, folks watching this, if you don't know those terms and conditions, sometimes you're clicking yes, and they are tracking you for 7 days after you leave the facility to see what you're doing and how you're doing it, so that they can better serve you in the future, or understand what it is you do.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's wild.
You're right. I mean, they can see exactly where you're going, exactly where people are congregating, within your actual facility. It's wild.
Right.
But yeah,
we're looking at it from a positive standpoint. It's going to help them understand where they need to service you better in the future, what products you're interested in, what you're doing around the event, how you're coming to and from, so that they can service you on that end. And just looking at it from that perspective, regardless of the other side of it. So yeah, that's great. So what's long-term vision for Base Sports Group? What are you guys trying to accomplish? What's your goals?
Long-term, we're just, again, we're trying to change the way that brands and sponsors view amateur and youth sports, right? I think that's the ultimate goal. And by doing that, I think we'll make sports more accessible, right? If we can provide additional revenue, or, a lot of these brands want to support the local communities that they're in, right? So if they can provide a pathway to provide more people to attend an event, or provide more people to get into the gym, right? I think that's the ultimate long-term goal, is to be able to make these venues more accessible. And I get it, right? Like, these venues, they have to turn the lights on. If it's inside, you have to have air conditioning or heating, or, run the pools, or the staffing that it takes to manage some of these places, right? So I understand that there's a lot of dollar values assigned to those. I think that's pretty obvious, but being able to provide different opportunities to make those places and all of these events more accessible to everybody, I think that's long-term an important goal for us.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, I'll end it on this. We've talked about a lot of things that I think someone watching this could take back. Listen, ask a lot of questions, utilize data to help you, portray yourself in the right way. The difference between advertising and sponsorship, I think people mix those quite a bit. Is there one more little piece of advice you'd give to our tourism colleagues in regards to securing sponsorships for their events, their facilities, or destinations that you'll leave them with. And then they can always come back to you and ask you directly, but something they might think about after this time.
Yeah, for sure. And happy to answer any questions. But I think you kind of hit on some of the main ones, right? Like ask the questions, right? Talk to people that understand this space. But also I think something that's very important is don't lose sight of your main goals as well, right? Like sponsorship and advertising, yes, it's a dollar value and it's a revenue opportunity that is there. And believe me, we're working to, provide these venues and events as much additional revenue as we can. But at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is going to come down to the foot traffic at these different venues. So you don't want to kind of take your focus off the foot traffic at the venues to focus on something else and lose, right? Because your consumer is the most valuable person. That's the most valuable person to the brand. That's the most valuable person to the success of your operations.
Right.
So keep that as the focus. Sponsorship and advertising is a great thing, but I would make sure just to continue to service the main core of your business first, and then everything else will kind of fall into place after that.
Nice. Well, that's great. Mark, I really appreciate your time. We're going to post this on social media. We have a YouTube page, Pellucid Travel, that people can follow, but we'll get the word out and make sure that they know how to get in contact with you. I look forward to interacting with you at some of the shows coming up. And like I said, I just really appreciate your time.
Awesome, Jason. I appreciate it. This has been great. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Bye.